Today's sharing will be on IRAS clawback on ABSD on people who have kind of avoided tax through this 99-1 arrangement. I know this old news, there's some information on the ground, but I also felt that there's some misunderstanding and some misconception with all this information. I thought I just kind of clear the air and share what I really think is the situation that's happening. All right. So firstly, I think the right term that one should be using it would be 101 rather than 99-1. Why do I say so? It's because it is from 100% stake and then selling a 1% stake in a short span of time. Okay, but before going into it, let me just over here explain quickly on how this normal new launch purchase process works for people who are not very familiar with it. Okay, so if you look over here, you see that the first part involves the option fee of 5%. And once you've kind of confirmed you pay that amount, you're given an option. Within 2 weeks, okay, you receive the sales and purchase agreement. And once you receive it, you kind of have 3 weeks to exercise the purchase. Now, if you see between this period, the 2 and 3 weeks, kind of like the maximum 5 weeks, is where a buyer goes to a bank and gets the loan applied and approved usually, okay, if he or she wants to get a loan, okay, before it's being exercised. Okay, that's why it's in red. Okay, and after exercising, in 2 to 3 weeks time, you kind of pay the stamp duty to IRAS and also the 15%, the exercise fee. Although you have exercised already, the 15% fee is actually payable a bit later, which is 8 weeks from the option period if you count it in totality. Okay, after this payment is done, you kind of conclude the initial down payment phase. So when this is a brand new launch, you kind of have around a year, I would say, before the first construction phase is completed, and that is the foundation phase. It's around a year, and that's when they start to call for the 10% payment. And this 10%, if you work it up together, it's also where your loan kicks in. Back then, before the LTV was 75%, when it was at 80%, it's when the foundation comes in, you don't need to pay for anything, your loan kicks in immediately. So there's this 1 year, kind of 1 year wait. Okay, so this is the normal process. So there's 3 things over here that what they want to achieve. One is, of course, to avoid paying the ABSD if the person have more than 1 property already. And secondly is, of course, to take the loan if this real purchaser has a good income to service the loan, to qualify for the loan. And thirdly is the usage of CPF if there's excess CPF. You see, I mean, just to give some information, loan count and property count are 2 different things. So if this real purchaser has multiple properties, but they're all fully paid, the next property, maybe the 2nd, 3rd, 4th property, they can still get the first loan, which is the maximum loan to value of 75% at the present time. Okay, as compared to property count, even if you fully pay a property, your 2nd, 3rd property will still be liable to whatever ABSD that's being taxed at. So do separate property count and loan count altogether. Okay, so back to this point, there are 3 main things that they want to achieve. One is to avoid ABSD, 2nd is to take the loan, and thirdly to use the CPF of the main purchaser. Okay, so if you look at the transaction, this purchaser can only comes in after the entire main transaction has been done, because if this real purchaser is combined with the so-called fake purchaser at the start, they will still be liable to the full ABSD payable. Okay, they'll charge at the higher one. Okay, so that's why the entire sub-sale transaction, the 100 and then the selling of the 1% stake, it is done after everything has been done, and it is during that 1 year period before the foundation is being called. And this also is more applicable if you realize towards new launches because there's more time allowed in between. It's seldom done in resale purchase because the time is very finite, right? The entire transaction process is very limited. But for a new launch, because there is a good waiting amount of period before the foundation is being called, this amount of waiting period can allow a sub-sale transaction to take place for the real purchaser to come in to take a 1% stake, and then after that to apply a loan and also to use the CPF for the rest of the 80% if he or she has the access. At the same time, when they are taking up the 1% stake, the transaction incur is only based on the 1% value of the property. So the ABSD involved, the seller stamp duty involved is all very, very limited. In all, when you compare with buying a property right from the onset with ABSD, the disparity in cost is a lot. That's the reason why people do it, okay? So a point to note is that the down payment is usually entirely paid in cash because the CPF and loan is undecided at that point of time. Now, when after the sub-sale of 1% is being done already, then of course they can choose how much CPF and loan that they want to undertake. Okay, so this is in essence how the entire arrangement is being done. Totally understand where IRAS is coming from. Well, if you look at this entire arrangement, although they are two separate transactions, but because they are very short term with one another, and you can kind of look at it as one singular transaction altogether in trying to circumvent the entire system and to avoid paying the tax. Well, but on the other hand, you can also feel that it's quite unfair and harsh. I mean, you can't possibly just leave a road down there with a pothole and expect people to fall in and then punish them even more, right? And I think it's not new. I think there are holes that are being closed up. Like for example, the reissue of option. URA just came out and said that, you know, you can't do reissue of option anymore. IRAS could have also said it for this arrangement, but they choose to kind of punish those that did this. So in Chinese we call it 杀一儆百, right? I mean, if that's what they want to achieve, I think they have achieved their goals in doing that. But if you look at really, you know, when I look at it very objectively, tax evasion, tax planning, and tax savings, it's a blur line, right? How you really define them all together. We are talking about even tax officer to help you do proper tax planning for big corporations. Can you say that they are doing tax planning? You can also say that they are also evading taxing to some extent, right? So I thought the authorities should be a bit clearer in how they define this arrangement as being flouting the rules as compared to the other methods, other things altogether, right? So now the bigger question would be, will the other methods of tax planning be appropriate? So what are they, right? We've got the 99(1). So what is the difference again? Let me re-emphasize over here. That one is 101. When you say about 99(1), that means you buy the property from onset, giving the both parties different percentage stakes, whether it's 50-50 tenancy in common, or it can be tenancy in common but 99 and 1% stake. Why do people want to achieve this? Why do people want to do this? They want to achieve it by actually probably reducing their tax in the future if they're going to sell the 1% stake, and then for the 1% stake person to buy another property without ABSD. I think that's what they want to achieve. And then you have the sell one, buy two, usually for HDBs and for ECs, right? You sell one and then you buy two. And you know that decoupling, I mean, just since you're on this topic, decoupling was even allowed for HDB quite some time ago until HDB said no, if they can only be done for valid reasons. Then you have HDB occupier. If you can do it properly, HDB occupier is still meet the family nucleus, but you still can purchase ABSD after MOP is being reached. So there's different how methods, you know, on tax planning. And then the bigger question is, are all these also illegal, right? So I just pulled this article somewhere whereby this expert, Alfred Chia, actually said that such transactions which I just mentioned above are above board because they're entitled to give up their previous properties if they have already purchased it right from the start and set it already properly, right? So how I look at it is, firstly, there are two separate transactions. Let's say if you do a 99(1) and you eventually want to sell it 3, 4, 5 years later to buy another property without ABSD, that are two two separate transactions that can be argued in different ways, whether at that point of time, due to certain personal circumstances, you have to do it at S99.1, right? And also time is a factor because it is a longer time frame of years in between. So in that aspect, I think it's quite safe. I mean, if they're going to say that all these things are all illegal, then I think it's a catch-all, because it's a big can of worms, because everyone will be implicated, right? So that's all for my sharing. It's quite technical towards the end. I think if you have questions on how you want to go and strategize your property purchase, then just hit me up and leave me a message. All right, thank you.